welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And now that you guys have finished with Josephina, we're going to jump a bit forward into history before jumping back again. But we're going to be looking at a 1998 Disney film called Ruby Bridges. So this is happening in New Orleans, or Louisiana, I think. Yeah, yes, it is in fact in New Orleans. This is, I believe it's the 1960s. Double check. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the 1960s. I know this story, but I'm not as familiar with it as I maybe should be. Okay, it is actually 1960. So this is a story of Ruby Bridges. So this is a fictional retelling of an actual story of an actual person. Ruby Bridges was in fact an actual human being. And I think she still is. But so this is an integration story. So this is New Orleans, Louisiana. It's 1960. Brown versus Board of Education has passed. The story of the Little Rock Nine, if you're not familiar with that, that was the 9 African-American teenagers who integrated a school, I think, in Alabama. So this is kind of a similar story, only the Little Rock Nine were teenagers. Ruby Bridges was going into the first grade. She was 6. That's the age of my kid. What she had to go through. So this story tells she's an African-American little girl. Her father works at a gas station. I think her mother's a nurse. Either that or she's a homemaker. I think her mother might be a nurse. She's the oldest of 5. And she's chosen through test scores. Again, they're fighting this. The state is fighting this. They do not want to integrate the schools. She scored really high. There were several children. For her school district, there was 2 other girls, but their parents chose to keep them where they were at and not have them go to the white school. Why Ruby's mother, who also kind of pushed her father as well as the NAACP, chose to have Ruby integrate this elementary school. And it is scary. And this little girl was extremely brave. So this shows how she goes to the school. There are angry mobs, yelling, screaming. They do not want her there. There is only one teacher who will teach her. You don't ever actually see the principal. You see the vice principal. And she does not want this. In fact, they do actually try to stop them. The marshals, I think, whether it's like the state police or something, say it's like the governor said we can't let her in. The marshal's like, the U.S. president says I can. And of course they step away. They're not going to mess with that. And she has to be surrounded by U.S. marshals all the time. Only one teacher will teach her, who was hired by the superintendent. She comes from the north. And nobody else will be in the classroom. And for the first couple of days, nobody else will be in the school until, I think it's a Baptist minister, pushes his way through with his daughter. And she was in kindergarten, so she's not in the same class as Ruby. And then slowly children start coming into the school. But for the first year, Ruby's taught alone because parents do not want their child in a classroom with a black kid. And her father loses his jobs. There's a lot of tension. Then you have this introduction. This is a real character of this child psychologist who's former military. And he offers his services to help Ruby and her family. And you see his relationship with her. And his specialty, or at least what he wants to be, his specialty is to study trauma in children who are basically children who are under stress. Ruby's under stress. And it's kind of interesting to see his relationship with her. And he's just moved to town with his wife. And you see the tension with Ruby's parents. You see at one point in time, she stops eating, and eventually they find out it's because this woman is threatening to kill her. Again, this is a grown white woman who's threatening to kill a 6-year-old. Hard to believe as a mother, but again, maybe not. It's still horrific. Can't imagine. That little girl put up with a lot. But it's interesting what he finds out and why I'm not a religious person. They are. And it's essentially, it's her community. And even blacks and whites are split on this. Even their community. There are some people in Ruby's own community that aren't happy that they're pushing the color barrier. These are African Americans who are not happy with one of their neighbors who are trying to integrate the schools. So they're not happy either. So there you see that tension as well. But yeah, Ruby has to go through a lot. You see that tension. You see what happens. You see how scared she is, but it's like she has people threatening her. For a while, she won't eat anything that's not packaged food because she's afraid of being poisoned. And the psychologist finds that out. He talks to the parents, and her father is not that happy about this. You definitely see that. And I know from looking at the Wikipedia page that her parents do eventually get divorced, whether it's over this or not. But again, it tears apart her family. But that's what this film is about. It shows some stuff, but I'm sure there's stuff it's not going to show. But they also showed that there's another teacher there who I think is another maybe first or second grade teacher, who at first she's very much against it. But then she sees Ruby, and she eventually, this teacher allows some of her kids to go into and play with Ruby and be taught by this other teacher. And near the end, after Ruby takes the test, the vice principal is going to basically mess with Ruby's scores because she scored so high. But she says, like, she's been tutored by herself. She's had an individual tutor all year, so it's not equal to the other kids. The teacher's like, this was your fault. You didn't let other kids come into the room. It's not her fault. She did all the work. And this other teacher backs her up. She's like, I watched her. She worked hard. That teacher came in every day. And she was also getting threats because she was daring to teach. She was a white woman daring to teach a black child. So it goes through that. And now what you don't see is that the next year things calm down. Things do eventually, obviously, calm down. I do believe this school that was integrated I don't think it's in operation anymore because of Hurricane Katrina. So, but it's an interesting film. It's a family film. So it's a good way to introduce integration and the bravery of this young girl. I mean, this is a 6-year-old who turns 7 near the end of the year, but mostly she's a 6-year-old who is very, very brave because of her community and because of her faith. And there's an interesting conversation between the parents where they'd had a picture of Jesus up on the wall. I think they're Baptist, but he's white. And her parents talk about it, and her father's like, all she sees is this. So she thinks whites are better. So they take down the picture of the white Jesus, which is kind of interesting. But that's what the psychologist finds out. Because of her family and her community and her faith, she doesn't experience the type of stress that he was seeing in children he'd studied before, I believe, on a polio ward, who were well off. She was used to facing adversity. So and she had a community around her. So he sees that and recognizes that. And he writes various different articles about it. He eventually writes books on this subject. But it's a very interesting film. It's very, very family friendly. It's great to introduce the topic of integration, particularly to the younger children, because they can identify with this. This is, again, when watching this, I was just speechless. I cannot see. I don't know if my own daughter would be that brave. Mind you, she's a little blue-eyed blonde white girl, so it's very, very unlikely she would experience that kind of thing. But nonetheless, it's kind of amazing. She, if you want to know a little bit more about what Ruby Bridges, she grows up. She goes obviously to an integrated high school. She becomes a real estate agent before taking over the running of her foundation, which helps provide supplies to children and various things. It basically helps support school children. So that is it for this review. We are starting in with Cecile and Marie Grace, which again we'll be jumping to their books, which is in New Orleans in the 1850s, completely different time period, literally jumping 100 years into the past for some of this stuff. But nonetheless, this is the end of this review. We will be continuing with Marie Grace and Cecile Ray throughout this month. We will jump into Kirsten, who's around the same time period as, but she's in Minnesota in the 1850s. And then we will move on to the American Civil War and Addie. After that, into the 1860s. So, and then we'll move from there. So, again, if you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.